Good morning, this is Angela with Dogwood Paper Arts, and we are back to work on our altered board book journal. Working on the cover. You can't tell it in the camera, but I have highlighted this stencil that I put down yesterday. It's a doily, and I used Wink of Stella on it. First I used ink. And I just darkened it in so that you could see the doily on top better. But I used Wink of Stella on it. And then I used my heat gun to kind of bring it up a little bit more. You can't tell, but it has a shimmer in it, just a little bit. And it looks far better down here than it does up there on the camera. We're going to do the same thing with this one. So I'm going to flip my book around, pointing towards me. And the first thing I did was I took antique linen, distress ink. I have this little one. There we go. And the first thing I did was just have my little makeup brush here. And I went around in it and just darkened it up a little bit. Went over it a couple times, and it gave it a nice darker antique look. It didn't make it look like a doily at all, but it did darken it up a little bit, which I liked. And I just kind of went over everything. Tried to stay, this side of it. And just get the little antique parts of the doily part. Just so that the ink would maybe get caught up in the edges of the matte medium we put down, the gel medium, yesterday, and would kind of just make that stand up just a little bit more. Am I still on camera? So you can see it's kind of starting to come around and get a little more highlighted. I tried different things to it. I did notice that the color got a little deeper as it dried, and I went back over it again. And then once I took the heat gun to it, it actually kind of cooked into the book. So but it's a little work. The Wink of Stella pen was a little more work, but I just wanted to kind of see if I could bring that up a little bit and highlight it a little bit more. So then what I did, don't panic. This is terrible, I know. This is distress embossing medium. I just put that over it, took my brush, and I just moved it around in there. And it looks bad when you start. But it starts kind of sticking to the edges of where the gel medium is raised up. And then it gets kind of gunky because it's, getting the inks and stuff on it. Okay, you do have to really clean your brush out. Then I just stamped this off like this, and then I brushed it to get a good portion of it off of there, and kind of bring it down a little bit. Okay, let me empty that paper. You don't want to save that. So then what I did was cleaned up my brush a little bit, and I'm going to cover my distress. This is Distress Embossing Glaze, and it is in the Vintage Photo. Okay, I'm sorry about the glare up there. I have a light that goes across the back, and it is what it is. Okay, so I cleaned up my brush a little bit. So I can go back in here and kind of clean out some of the spots a little bit where I didn't really want the distressing ink. All I really wanted was to kind of highlight the edges of just slightly. And it really shows up better here than it does up there. Okay. Then, oh my, I'm getting really dirty. Then I took my Wink of Stella pen, and this one is a wet brush, and it is kind of a silverish color, a silverish gold. And then I just went over the raised parts. So this is what took so much time. Mostly just the raised parts of the gel medium that we put on yesterday. I'm just trying to highlight the doily, just a little bit. It's not a lot, and it really doesn't look like much up there on the camera. But down here, and you do have to keep wiping your brush off because you have that extra embossing on there. So you do have to care for your tools as you go. And I just kind of pinch the dusty part off of there. Just to keep my brush clean. And then, before it got a super good chance to dry, on that part where the Wink of Stella is on top of the embossing ink, I went ahead and dried it all the way. And then a little bit of that distress stuff starts showing as well around the edges. I wish it would show up there, but it just doesn't do justice to how it looks down here. Okay. Every once in a while you have to give your Wink of Stella a little squeeze. Make sure it's still working. I do notice that these pens leak pretty bad. So you have to squeeze carefully. What I squeezed out over there, I'm just adding. And I'm not being too careful to stay inside the lines. As you know, I'm not a stay inside the lines kind of person. It's just the way I am. Showing up good over on this side after I gave the pen a good squeeze. It's my husband's phone. Okay. Clean off your brush every now and then. It does give you glitter finger. And I suppose you could take a brush and put whatever you want on these. Whoops. Now it's coming out a whole lot. Will probably look better. Some of them I went over again just to kind of see if it would highlight them any better. Sorry, I'm so quiet. Concentrating on hitting all these little dots on here. The other thing this does is that as it picks up the embossing powder, it kind of puts it even around the edges, even more of those raised parts of the gel medium we put on. And it gets it wet so that it raises up again. Now, I'm not an expert with stamping, just so you know. It's not my expertise at all. But I do find that I can get it to do things by playing with it. Okay. Clean out your brush. And then I like to bring it back up to a little bit of a point there, if I can. And figure out where you put the cap and cap it back up. And then let's dry it off. Ooh, look at that. Where I got too much ink, it's really pretty. Well, I guess it's kind of a glitter glue. I just want to dry it off a little bit and make it so I can carry on with my book. You can see it's just cooking some of that wink of Stella. It's very pretty. Okay, I'm going to call that done right now. I don't know. I wish you could see what it looks like. It's a silvery gold color with that antique linen and the vintage photo all mixed into one, and it's really very pretty. Now sometimes you can go back through and wipe any little extra things off. Not much, you can't wipe much out of it. But while it's still a little damp, you can move some of the stuff around a little bit. Okay, I'm going to just clean up my brush so I can get all that dust out of there. This will make a nice tea-dye towel for grunginess, won't it? Okay, so I think that we will let that dry all the way, and then when we come back we'll trim up the book, the edges, and we will go to the inside page, this one and this one. So we'll have to gesso and then dry that and then go from there and add our paper. Decide what kind of paper we want inside of this journal. I do want to add some of my extra pieces here that are weren't good enough for digitals. So I do want to add some of those. Okay, we'll be back. Thanks for joining me for now. We'll be back in a few.